A lot of people say that Phoenix Rising has been bad this season, but how bad are they compared to Phoenix Rising teams of the past? Find out tonight. You can't really match the beat, but no one can, because welcome into the PHNX Rising podcast. Appreciate everyone joining us here live from Studio K, presented by Circle K, where you can go in, get a 79-cent Polar Pop, 69 cents. If you are an Inner Circle member, save that money, all that great stuff. Do it today. Leave a like on your way in here. Appreciate everyone joining us. We got a fun episode tonight, kind of breaking down how this current 2024 Phoenix Rising team compares to some of the past. It will surprise you, but I'm Max Simpson, and I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Owain the Oracle Evans. How we doing, buddy? Show us your kid Thursdays.
You sound like you need that Polar Pop, mate. The energy levels are a little bit low. You got to get that sugar up, you know?
I'm exhausted.
He's exhausted, the poor man. You know, he's busy working on those shoulders, eh, Max?
Yeah, well.
Oh, yeah, he's getting the strength up there.
They're already up. I'm stronger
They're already
than you.
up. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, everyone, appreciate y'all
Goalie man
joining
Pat,
us.
USA is doomed, bringing in Tottenham sloppy seconds.
I would not say that. That man has took us to great heights. And listen, the U.S. can only go up from here. So there we go. We'll get into that
We'll see.
later. Yes, we'll get into that later. But yes, hit that like button, everyone. Again, we kind of teased it a bit on Tuesday's show, but we're going to be looking at how this Phoenix Rising team, right? A lot of people, this is kind of the weird dichotomy that we entered in going into this season, right? Of Phoenix Rising winning the championship. You knew there was going to be change at some level. We maybe didn't quite expect this level of change. So now you're kind of comparing, how does this team stack up against teams of the past? Owain, before we dive into the hard numbers and stats, you have been covering this team for quite some time.
Don't remind me.
It's pretty fair to say. How would you say, the level of the play on the level of the pitch, as well as just the overall kind of environment? How is this compared to some of the Rising teams of old?
Right, so obviously level on the pitch, we've kind of been here before a little bit. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe it's not the perfect comparison. We'll get into that in a bit, why it may or may not be. But the idea of seeing this team struggle at this stage in the season, we've been there before. I think the difference, again, more than anything this season, is that it came where the fans weren't just baying for the coach's head, okay? Last time we really saw the team play this poorly was 2022, and it was under Rick Shantz. And obviously at that point, he'd had a lot of time at the helm. He'd had the opportunities to put his own imprint on the team, and it was entirely a Rick Shantz team. When they failed, obviously the buck stopped there, but the way that this season's gone, it hasn't been quite that way. Now, as Goldman Pat says, Phoenix Rising has never been this boring to watch since they were Arizona United. It's interesting because we've got data going back to the Arizona United days, and we will be going through some of these things today to give you a bit of an insight onto just certain things and certain trends in there that we've seen so far this season. But Max, overall, I'm going to let you take it from there. How are you feeling about this season overall? Because you've been around USL at least for a while, even if not specifically following this team. How do you think this is different or not? Before we get into the numbers.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, well, the kind of, big duh is that the numbers back this up in that, you kind of, right, when I was in Reno, right, during the stretch from 2018 to 2020, I mean, granted, the 2020 is maybe a bit of a wash in some ways, but right, you even kind of remember going into those seasons, right? Phoenix Rising was a powerhouse, right? For
100%.
for as much as a regular season juggernaut that Reno 1860 FC often was, no matter what people say, right? They competed well in the regular season, but Phoenix Rising was always the team, especially in the West, right? Regardless whether they were in a hot run of form or maybe they weren't turning it on, you knew that once it came time to playoffs, they had something to prove. Now, granted, the results, maybe a little bit of a different story, but you looked at this club, they were never one that you wanted to face. Yes, no team is perfect, but when you looked at how they were constructed, you knew that they always had good keeper behind the sticks. They had a plethora of offensive talent, and that the games were always going to be pretty interesting. And you'll see kind of in the data, it's a pretty long way off from that stretch. I mean, right, you can say that, when we're going to compare all these different years and different seasons and everything like that. I will caveat that, I think the success of that team was so historic and so good that you're going to see everything after 2020. It's going to pale in comparison just due to how good those teams were. But nonetheless, this season, it's looked particularly poor. And I think, to Goalie Man Pat's point, not only do the stats and everything kind of back that up, but really from the eye test, it has not been super enjoyable to watch.
I think the thing about it as well, maybe this is where the difference is that in 2022, when Phoenix Rising struggled under Rick Chance, they still had their games.
Yes.
They still appeared every so often. One of Rick Chance's last win, I believe, and they absolutely demolished Colorado Springs. We haven't seen those kind of results really this season either, and so that plays into this as well.
It does. Well, without further ado, we'll show the first graphic here in a second. And again, just a caveat, just to make sure, right? We try to make this as even as possible. So a couple kind of ground rules or pointers before we point this out. Number one, we go back through the 2014 season. So it's a nice 10-year span. Okay. Number two, we go from matches in. So, right, this isn't based over the entire season. It's where we're at now. Every single season, barring the 2020 season.
Where we did the full 16-game regular season because that was the nature of that year.
That is correct. Every other season, we go 22 matches in of where each season Rising is at this point. Obviously, different dates here and there, but it's 22 matches in for all of the seasons except for 2020, where, yes, it's all 16 matches. But, right, we'll show you kind of everything. Let's start with points. This is how Rising has stacked up, in traditional seasons. Very quickly, I will read it chronologically, starting from 2014. Again, this is number of points. 2014, 23 points. 2015, 25 points. 2016, 30 points. 2017, 33 points. 2018, 41 points. 2019, 50 points. 2020, again, with only 16 games, 35 points. 2021, 47 points. 2022, 28 points. 2023, 29 points. And 2024, 26 points. Again, a reminder, that is points after 22 games in.
So the thing about that is that means that this is now the worst season they've had after 22 games for points since the Arizona United days, and not even the final Arizona United season. In the final Arizona United season, that team was ahead of where this team is now after 22 games in terms of points on the board. Mm-hmm. You're talking of a comparison most directly probably to 2015. Now, are they within touching distance of 23 of 22? Yes, they are. 22, obviously, the team misses the playoffs. 23, they go on the run. They make it into the playoffs. They actually, and this is a big part of it, they go on that run right about now in terms of games played. It's right around now when they start to go on a run that just sees them unbeaten for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. They win a lot of games. That's difficult to do. Now, the team has talent there, but again, if you're saying, we'll get there, it's going to be difficult. It's something that needs to click now if you're going to realistically, I think, make something. But even then, the key thing here is making the playoffs isn't necessarily a guarantee. Well, last season, everyone was saying this was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of run for Phoenix Rising. It was a once-in-a-lifetime run for almost any club. The idea that you'll repeat that once should they get into the playoffs, is kind of hard to believe. Again, 2015, 2014, those teams didn't make the playoffs. 2016, with 4 more points at this point, although admittedly, again, very different league at the time, didn't make the playoffs that season. The only other time then that Rising have made the playoffs, ignoring last year, As from the closest the Rising team has been to actually making the playoffs in this kind of a position was in 2017 when they had 33 points at this point. So Rising is 7 points behind that. And 23, they go on a run. It's entirely possible they do so again, but the time is running out to find that run of form this year. But it doesn't look good, does it? And that's the thing. Now, some of the underlying numbers as well also explain why that's looking so rough as well. So should we have a look at goals scored?
But the one thing we will point out, and again, some of the things we're talking about, we won't have graphics for purely just because it's kind of a little bit easier to talk through. But even, we had Stylacky Reese, and again, shout out to Stylacky Reese, who compiled all these different stats for us. This is a project he's been working on for a little bit. But, we also wanted to see how these teams, how these Phoenix Rising clubs, each of the seasons ended, right? So again, while we don't have a graphic for it, just easy to talk through. All of these different clubs, right? There's different points of the season based on the different number of season lengths, right? Some of the seasons, right? It's, at this point in the season, there are only 6 matches remaining. Other times it's 12 matches remaining. But if you're kind of looking at a, per game basis, how many different wins do they have after this 22 game point? How many points are they picking up? Everything like that. You're kind of looking, and even though in that 2017 to 2019 stretch where you're getting 33 points, 41 points, 50 points at the heart of Phoenix Rising during their reincarnation as Phoenix Rising from Arizona United, they're not just like riding high at this point, 22 matches in, they're also ending well. You then contrast that with the last 3 seasons, the number of points that they're picking up from these remaining games, it's down compared to that season. So I think this just goes to show that while we are more than, we're at about the 2/3 point of the season, not only are they hot, our past teams, especially that 2017 and 2019 run, hot coming in to this point, but they also finished strongly. And I think that's going to be the key differentiator because as we'll talk through, yes, score is, defending goals are definitely part of it, which, spoiler, this season is actually not as bad as my people think. But really where the key differentiator is goals scored. And, well, that just has been pretty poor this season.
Oh, it's been awful. And again, we'll get some context on that coming shortly. But I mean, you're right. Okay, it's how you end the season that's often most important. Last season, Rising actually, look, the last couple of games weren't great. But by and large, that last 2 months of the season, Rising were pretty decent. They went unbeaten through large stretch of August and September. Okay, they lost their last 2 games, but I believe those were the first games they'd lost since August. Okay, So yes, there were some draws late on, so they weren't necessarily winning at the very end of the season, but they did have a stretch where, again, this team, I think it was the end of July against Sacramento, was really the one that kind of made us think, okay, they're maybe this team isn't making the playoffs again. And then in space of about 3-4 weeks, suddenly it turned around to, can you get a home playoff game? Again, that's something that's possible. It's even technically possible now just because of, again, how close everyone is right now in the Western Conference. It could be done, but it's not going to be easy. And again, the longer you leave that and the more pressure then that you feel as well going into these games as the season gets later, that's going to be the differentiator. If you get to a point whereby, again, 2 of the top 3, and maybe they're not playing the best, all of them at the moment, but New Mexico and Oakland on the road in the space of a matter of days, that's coming up in October. If you get to that point and you desperately need wins, you might find yourself in a lot of trouble at that point because, again, you're going to face some of the top teams. You finish the season away to Louisville. That is going to be a very, very difficult game. It's hard going east anyway, but going east to play the top team in the east by a large margin, I think, at the moment, that's going to be difficult. And again, you've got to get it, kind of turned around sooner rather than later. So that's the challenge. That's the challenge, really.
That is the challenge, right? Seeing, goodness gracious, yeah, there's a lot of. By the way, this is a football podcast, it's a soccer podcast. Keep your baseball talk elsewhere. Go to PHNX Diamondbacks podcast if you want to talk baseball there, everyone. And yeah, see Siley.
Well, listen, I see the link.
I see the link. What they're trying to do. I see the link.
Come on.
The one actually.
But you're right, Devin. Alec Thomas can go in the D-backs.
The one link that I will say that Phoenix Rising the Arizona Diamondbacks and PHNX have to each other. So friends at Circle K. Circle K, they are a proud partner of all of those entities.
Oh,
you can
Max,
go in and get a 79-cent
transition.
Polar Pop. All of those
almost
places,
as bad as the Tampa
check
Bay transition at the
them
back.
out.
You
Get
know?
a Polar Pop inside of you and all the different things that can come with it, right? Whether it's, a little bit of brand redacted energy drink, a brand redacted soda, or a water, brand redacted. You can get everything in that Polar Pop with the crushed ice. You know how it be. Check it out.
Max, what do you get in your Polar Pops?
79 cents. Honestly, a little bit of a mix of a brand redacted.
You can say what it is. There's something with Circle K.
A little brand redacted energy drink, little electrolytes for me, especially after I play a little footy. But yes, check out Circle K. They're 79-cent Polar Pop, and you get a discount, 10 cents off 69-cent Polar Pops for our Inner Circle members. Here we go. Check them out. Again, 25 cents off per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. Producer Cal, it's that time. Oh, that's right.
Oh,
we got? We got the worm. We got the worm. We did it Tuesday. I really hope you get this because I also need the sugar a little bit. Here we go.
Okay.
Yep. Let's go. At 2 for 2, baby. Check our friends at Circle K.
Yeah, one of these days, Max is gonna actually choke on one of those.
You keep saying that.
One of these days is gonna happen.
Boom. Kevin and Max's fantasy league team name, the
Brand
Inner
Redacted.
Circle?
Brand Redacted.
Actually, I kind of like that. Kind of goes hard. Check out our friends at Circle K. Terms and conditions do apply. See participating locations for details. All right. We kind of ran you through, guys, points, how this team is doing, right? But there are 2 routes to get there, right? Goals for,
they're
goals
both kind of intertwined, right? That one was on target. That shot from producer Carl was dead on target.
Yes,
have Rising been on target this season?
Oh, nice.
We can have a look at those goal numbers.
Boom, there we go.
Let's have a look at Rising's goals.
Exactly. Again, reminder, this is goals through 22 games.
This is their worst ever season, including the Arizona United years.
Yes.
For goals scored through 22 games.
That is exactly it. For those who are listening on audio, here we go. 2014 season, 24 goals scored. 2015 season, 25 goals scored. 2016 season, 29 goals scored. 2017 season, 29 goals scored. 2018 season, 40 goals scored. 2019 season, 58. Holy heck. 22 season after 2020 season after 16 games, 46 goals scored. 2021, 50 goals scored. 2022, 37 goals scored. 2023, 33 goals scored. And we've been saying a lot of 30s, 40s, and 50s. 2024, 21 goals scored. This is not just the worst goal scoring season in Phoenix Rising history. This is since the Arizona United days. This is the worst goal scoring from this team. And we're talking a multiple goal difference from anything Phoenix Rising. The next worst Phoenix Rising season, what is that? 33 goals scored? No, 29
2017. That's the first season.
That was the first incarnation.
Right,
that was a very different team.
That's when you've got, admittedly, you got Luke Rooney there, right?
2020
you've got a couple of other people there, but
the ghost of
you look at some of the players they had there, and they had Sean Wright Phillips, they had Didier Drogba when he was fit,
it's crazy,
playing. You had Omar Bravo, who we all know how Omar Bravo went here in Phoenix. There were some interestingly old players on that team. But again, it's just the goal scoring this season has been absolutely terrible.
Not the good kind.
It's almost that point whereby, again, you can say, well, the goal scoring will come. We haven't really seen that yet this season. And not only that, but again, it's just so far behind where it's been in recent years. Right, even in 2022, when they were struggling under Rick Shantz, they had 37. Last year, when they were only a few points ahead of where they are right now, they were on 33 goals scored, right? And Rising are on 21. They've got about a third of the goals, 2/3, of the goals scored from last season.
Yeah, and
it's pitiful.
Yeah. And again, if we're isolating this again, taking out the Arizona United years, even if you're looking for silver linings or anything like that, again, we're talking about 22 games in for these seasons, excluding the 2020 season. You look at how those clubs, those different Phoenix Rising incarnations ended, right? And again, some of them played 12 matches, some of them played 10, but let's say, the average, right? It's about 11, right? You're looking at each of those seasons. It kind of goes in par in how they're entering, right? 2017, 2018, 2019. all very hot goal scoring seasons. This team was flying high. And no surprise, they ended very high. 2017, in 10 games remaining, they had 21 goals scored. 12 games remaining, they had 23 goals scored. And another 12 games remaining in 2019, 31 goals scored. It is no surprise then that the 2021 season, listen, for as hyped as it was with 47 goals after 22 games, you then start to see a bit of that fall off where there's only 18 goals scored to end those 10 games. And really, it kind of just nosedived. That 2022 season was poor in goals scored, both throughout the remainder, but really, really ending the season. And then 2023, you kind of start to see a little bit of those issues of, right, it's a lower goal tally, and it's kind of incarnated now to where when you lose your top two strikers, you're kind of at this point where, okay, where are the goals coming from is what we've been saying.
Worth noting on that, 18 goals in the back end of 2021. That, of course, that comes after a couple of things there. Rufat Dadashov leaves. Rising, as Rick put it, before going into the playoffs, right? They've been on vacation for a few weeks now because they've been, they won the division that they were in at that point so early that things just slowed up. And again, we knew there were problems. We saw that kind of experimentation where you had really the club relied on Egbo for a while to lead the line. David Egbo, who I feel for the kid because he took far too much pressure on, I think, in that moment. We saw the club later put John Baquero out there up top. And again, I think John Baquero being put up top probably came too little too late because you should have done it when you were destroying the confidence of David Egbo, to be perfectly frank. Who was, again, just a relatively young player on loan at that point. You then have to look at, they bring Darren Mattocks in late, and he scores all right, but again, it's not enough when you actually get into the playoffs in the end. And 22, they struggled for goals that year, right? The team struggled for goals overall that year. Pretty dismal. Hi, Harry. Yes, this club is also suffering much like San Antonio is, although they are higher in the table than San Antonio. However, San Antonio won the head-to-head match up there. And still have to play each other before the season is out, so we'll see how that goes. But it's the need for those goals. Again, 21 goals that Rising team scored last year in the last 12 games. He's got the same number of goals in the last 12 games as Rising has in 22 so far this season. They turned it on late in the season. There's a reason why, again, this kind of goes back to the points beforehand, right? And talking about the need to get things going sooner. Okay? Sooner rather than later. Rising only lost 2 games last year after this point, and those 2 were the final 2 games of the season. They genuinely went unbeaten from this point for 10 more games.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's the reality of how this team did last season. Yeah. That's how they managed to push on and do what they did last season. The question is, does this team right now have that in them right now? Or are they going to, at best, sneak into a playoff position in 7th or 8th, be a regression on last season? And again, it still raises questions. But the goal scoring, look, we can see how bad it is this season. Again, it's one of those things where, as we look at this, I think a lot of people were questioning at the start of the season if this team needed a new striker. We've already reported, of course, concerns from sources that Danny Stone and his staff were asking for additional support in those kind of positions before things went the way that they did in the end earlier this season. And so, yes, now you have had the addition of Tomas Angel who's come in and can, ultimately maybe turn their fortunes around if things click correctly. Still, we don't know. He's yet to find the back of the net between those 2 games so far. Still probably a bit too early to judge him on that fact. But we have to wait and see how that goes. But if you'd have dealt with this issue in the off-season, if you'd have handled it then and known you needed more in terms of goal scoring available for this team, maybe you wouldn't be in this position. Because clearly it is the goal scoring that is letting this team down at the moment by a large margin.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think the thing that was, for as middling at times as last season's club could be, right? There were stretches where they'll win 4-0, they'll win 5-0. You did see a battering, right? The battering, away to Sacramento. Like, you did see some really poor matches, but I think all in all, there are a lot of 2-1s, 2-2s, 1-1, stuff like that. It was very tightly contested, right? I mean, you look overall at last season, this club ended with a positive +3 goal difference, which you look at how they finished in the table. They finished 6th. It stacks up pretty well. The eye test, the stats all kind of backed up. The finish was pretty justified. There were no very violent swings. Yes, there was a little bit of an unbeaten run and stuff like that. But, they dropped some points where, draws could have been wins, and it all kind of shakes out. I think the big difference here, and this is going to be the question that is asked of this club in the remaining matches, is you look at last year's season. If we're going to make that the closest comparison, because listen, for all this history that we're kind of doing, you can really only compare the squad to what it was last year. And even in that, it has been very well documented how much change has happened since last year's championship win, right? Over the course of 2023, 22 games in, the goal difference at that point was +3, okay? 33 goals for, 30 goals against, a +3 goal differential. That club ended 21 goals for, 11 goals against, a +10 goal differential. Those marks in goals for, goals against, and goal difference, if you look at Phoenix Rising historically, all of those are either in the top 3 or top 4 of any Phoenix Rising team in their history. The stretch they ended the season, even with those 2 losses to end the year, was one of the more consistent stabilizing forces that Phoenix Rising has had. I don't know if we are going to see that this time around, because that's the big question, is for as poorly as this team has played throughout this season, for as inconsistent and for as lack of goal scoring that we've seen, there is time, and in theory, you can turn things around. I just don't know if we're going to get that, because even when last year had its dull moments, they came together when they needed to. I'm curious if we're going to see that.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. I think the other part to it as well, Gunman Pat brings up, it's not just the goal scoring, it's not just the finishing, right? There's not enough developing attack. I agree. You can see that in the expected goals tally as well so far this year, right? When Rising have scored 21 goals, look, the XG is 26, so they should have probably scored more. So finishing is definitely a part of it. But that's also the lowest over the last 4 years in total, so including 23, 22, and 21. That's the lowest XG they've had. In fact, it's the first time in that 4-year stretch they've had an XG below 30. Okay? In fact, again, you look at the highs of 21 when they started that season so well. Their XG was 48.88. They were creating so much more.
Yeah.
Even in some of the other years where they've struggled, their expected goals tally has been closer to 33 and a half than the 26 that it's currently at. Have we scored a cross? Kevin, great question. The crossing's not been great this year.
Nope.
That's been a consistent theme. That's been something we've been discussing, I think, for a long time so far this season. Going on Pat with, I don't think it's a coincidence that both this and last season the team struggled the most when it's relying on Fede in the midfield. It's an interesting topic to bring up. Obviously, Fede towards the end of last season fell very much out of failure. I believe in the final 12 games, playoffs included, he started only 1, as that pops up in there as well. Look, he didn't make the bench in the playoffs either. So he's not that... He wasn't a big part of the title push on the field at the very end of the season. He fell into a position whereby he was very much a backup and a backup at best. And this season, I think we've seen a lot more from him in terms of minutes, but I don't think we've necessarily seen a lot more from him necessarily in terms of quality on the field. I feel as though, again, he's somebody who we know certain talents that he has, and you'll chat with some of the guys that bring up, his technical abilities and all of that. It's great. Mm-hmm. But this is the second division in the US. In the nicest possible way, if you put some really great technical footballers and set them down to English League 2, they'd struggle because it's not necessarily. It's not that this league is just cloggers, okay? I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to go to that extreme because it's not true, to be fair.
Sure.
There are some great players with great technique that do some really good things in this league. But at the same time, it's America. You guys obsess over things like athleticism.
Here we go.
No, but it's true. And that's a large part of the game here. Is it not? Is a physical, quick game not a part of that? It's more characteristic of the US game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree.
Especially, I think, MLS has been moving slowly away from that towards a more technical approach.
Because I think you're able to
But obviously, when you're in the lower divisions, you're going to...
Because at the lower divisions, you're only able to pull, realistically, a little bit more domestically, whereas even in MLS, you're able to, expand your reach a bit further, get a bit more additional styles. I agree. You're kind of pulling from what the general population has been, which, I mean, yes, it's very much about athleticism. It's very much right. It's not decades and decades and, generations of, skillful how to kind of play the game in that sort of respect.
Well, it's the approach to youth development level often as well, isn't it?
And that's
right?
that's a whole podcast.
No, it is. And it's things that win at lower levels and push people on. And you're right, there's a whole other podcast on that. But it's still an important part. But it's an important part, by and large, to be fair, of lower leagues in most countries. Okay?
Sure.
It's the very nature of it. If you had the technical skills and all the other things, you're not playing at those levels. And then by and large, the people who have one or another, yeah, the technical skills will win out to an extent. But when everything is at a lower level, the likelihood is, to an extent, bully ball does win a little bit more.
It sure does. I do want to...
It's not perfect. It's not an entirely, guaranteed thing. And I don't mean it as a criticism of players necessarily in this league, many of whom do have some very good technical skills.
Yes.
But the key thing about it more is that it feels as though you need a baseline in either pace or physicality or just ability to move. And the thing about Federico Varela, as we watch him and you watch him play by and large, is that with rare exception, it doesn't feel as though he is the most mobile player out there.
Sure.
It doesn't feel as though he wins many particularly physical battles. Okay, I think we saw in Colorado Springs a few times when he's running up towards the referee with his arms in the air, incredulous that he's been dispossessed by someone who just frankly outmuscled him. And again, he's not the quickest guy. I mean, he's had injuries through his career, and maybe he's unfortunate that that's the case. Maybe he was quicker in his youth. But right now, that's not quite who he is. And obviously, when you have those kind of shortcomings, and a team feels like they have to rely on you at times in a game to pull them through, you're probably going to struggle. And it's why we see flashes from Fede, but I don't think we see too many complete performances.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. And I'm seeing Pog a little bit earlier up in the chat, right? He sums it up pretty well, a little bit up, a little bit. I just don't see it without the goal scoring. And that's just it. But that is only half the battle, right? For everything, all this talk about...
You don't have to score to win, though,
You do have to score to win.
You can concede a load and still win,
Absolutely.
But you can't win without scoring a goal.
And that is absolutely true. Goals change games, as I say.
Although own goals also can change games.
Yes, they do. But, right, I mean, I think that's part of it is, right, is yes, you have to be able to score to win games, but also you need to be able to not concede in order to try to get some sort of results. Let's take a look now at the final kind of comparison from season to season is in goals conceded, right? Again, reminder, this is after 22 games going back to 2014. Here we go. 2014 season, 36 goals conceded. 2015 season, 49. 2016 season, 29. 2017 season, 30. 2018 season, 25. 2019 season, 20. 2020 season, only 16 games, 17 goals conceded. 2021 season, 23 goals conceded. 2022 season, 40. 2023 season, 30, and 2024, this current season, 25 goals conceded. You look at the season, they're actually pacing better at this point compared to the previous, 2 seasons, right? From a goal differential standpoint, these last 3 seasons, right? This season, this past season, and the one before, you kind of look at that's when it was, either post-Rick Schantz or Rick Schantz was, kind of getting phased out. And this was Rising's adaptation to a different style of play. And the goal differential this season, -4, last season, +3, and the previous season, 2022, -3. You were seeing an adaptation into a different way of playing. nothing, right, kind of touches that really hierarchy from 2018 to 2021. But you kind of look at this season, they are faring better defensively than what we've seen, because this is kind of what we expected with this team going in. They have a solid goalkeeper. They have a solid back.
Can I hop in on the goalkeeper one?
I guess you're going to.
Yes, Rocco is a very, very good goalkeeper, but it goes well beyond him, and we shouldn't just point it out as people often do, where it's the goalkeeper saved us, because when you actually look at the underlying numbers again on this, so far this season, the expected goals against 26.77, the actual goals against 25. The XG against is low, okay? It is low. That's lower than the last 2 seasons by a fair bit. So again, yes, they're not necessarily without a lot of help from Rocco. Of course, he's helped them a lot. He is a very good goalkeeper, but you can't just put it on him, because again, the XG against, you expect it to be, somewhat near the goals conceded, and it is. So that suggests they're actually very good at preventing chances from happening as well, which is what you were about to get onto with the back line is also pretty decent as well.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, the goals against, right? It's this club has been decent compared to previous seasons. I think that's what we expected, that it gives you a fighting chance. It gives you, right? We thought that there were going to be a lot of matches where we knew the goal scoring in theory is going to be down, but at least you are able to play yourself into results. It might be ugly, it might be 0-0, it might be 1-1s, but you're in that position. And you look at the goal differential, it kind of maps out this way. For as poor as Rising has been and felt, a -4, it sounds about right. Again, the stats, for the most part, back that up. It's a lack of creativity, but it's also stifling the opponents to a lack of creativity, so to speak. So when you kind of look at that, listen, it's not a hope. It's not really much you can build off of. I mean, this team, again, as we're saying, if you look at the trend, if you look at even how in previous seasons that they finished, you have seen this club, they try to stifle it up late down the stretch. I think that's not the issue, as we keep on saying. It's going to be, can this team find creativity? And, that's just going to be one where I don't know if you can look to history, knowing that I think if there are going to be any parallels you can take from last season, it is going to tend to be more from the defensive side, knowing that, right, again, as we keep saying, similar, same goalkeeper, a lot of guys back line are coming back, and plus they've been retooled. Last season, they finished well defensively. They also finished well from an offensive standpoint. You can kind of throw that out the window because so many guys are not there anymore, and we don't know where it's going to come from.
No, we don't.
If you are riding, shoot, anything close to your current goal differential of -4, that's just not going to get it done. I mean, mathematically, you're going to miss the playoffs. You need to come up with something. You need to come up with something that's going to get goals in the back of the net, because at this point, from a historic standpoint, from how this team is pacing, the defense is not the issue. That gets into what to expect.
Yeah, I think something here from Kevin mentioning about how Rising have good size and defense set pieces as well with the short keeper. Don't understand why you don't score more on attacking corners. I do broadly agree. I think aerially, as Max has fun with his microphone there, aerially, Rising are really good at clearing their own lines. I think they don't give up too many chances in their own penalty area in the air.
They've also gotten more athletic at the back too.
They do. I mean, you look, Pap is really good in the air.
Yep.
Some of the other players also, I know JP Skiers can win headers. These are guys who can do things with the ball in the air. They don't tend to. When was the last time we scored in a set piece? The answer would probably be El Paso, the JP Skiers goal.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it was a free kick from out wide. It was a free kick from wide. They knocked one in. And again, they won the ball in the air. That was the key thing. They win the ball in the air. But they don't often, it feels, do that on attacking set pieces. They tend to be more dangerous. Well, not necessarily dangerous. They tend to have more fun in the air when they're at the back. Look, it's difficult. It's difficult. I will say this. When we're talking about where the spark is going to be in the attack, obviously the answers people will point to things like Thomas Angel. They'll point to Charlie Dennis if he gets going. They'll point to, again, we're expecting some signings for the club to come in, one of which will be announced tomorrow. The club has said there will be a signing announced tomorrow morning. People were asking a little bit about that. I'm expecting, I would be surprised, given this club has been looking at wingers, if it wasn't a winger, for the very simple reason that that's something that suits Diego's playing style more. But that's also a problem there, right? Is you're trying to adapt to a slightly different playing style partway through the season. Now, it may work, it may not. But the problem with that also is that there's no guarantee that you're sticking with it after this season is over. Because the club, as best we can tell, is in the hunt for managers. I don't believe, personally, that Diego is the long-term hope for the club. Although, of course, if things turn around this season, he may play himself into a position where it's harder to get rid of him. I will say this, though. It's worth remembering that this team, we're talking about making the playoffs as they're making the playoffs as a success now. When Danny Stone was relieved of his duties, this team was in the playoff positions. They weren't below the playoff line at that point. They've fallen down below it since. Since Danny Stone was relieved of his duties. They were above that line beforehand. And again, I'm not going to say that there weren't reasons and a rationale for why Danny went at the time that he did. But again, they've fallen down the standings since he left.
They have.
Rather than this idea that they've turned a corner since his departure. And they may be starting to turn a corner, but again, we're judging that off of one game and some signings that we think have promise.
True.
But that doesn't mean that it will actually bear out. It could. It could very well bear out, but it doesn't mean that it will.
And I think the point, right, that you kind of mentioned is right. This, the goal of making playoffs, it's not the hope or what you're striving for. I mean, that is the standard. That is the expectation. That is the given. And, you make that move, away from Danny Stone. I mean, listen, we're not inside the minds of the front office. Like, was there worry perhaps of, oh no, we need to do this to save our season, not fall behind the playoffs, perhaps. But I think even more so, you're probably thinking of this as, can we turn to someone who can give us not just you're already at the playoff, like above the playoff line, like you're saying, can we get further up? And I think that's the gamble what you make when you make a mid-season kind of shift like that is, are you going to be able to create more offensively, create that attacking thing? And what we've kind of seen, again, compared to last season, compared to even, parts of this season, it just hasn't paid those dividends. And again, the goals for this season at 21 goals is the worst in team history. Regardless whether you're going to put that on Danny Stone, on Diego, whoever you're going to put that on.
Put on
that
a
is
t-shirt.
Put on a t-shirt.
That is
it is across the board, man. That is, and it's by a low margin. You're, again, in 7 years you'll have to find something that's the least, the second lowest. I think that runs so much further than just squad and everything like that. I mean, that's just a complete overhaul from where this club was. I mean, right? This is a fun exercise, I think, just to kind of see where other teams are trending. I mean, again, the last 3 years, again, through 22 games, -4 goal differential, 3 and -3. It's not bad. I mean, it's not great, but I think it just compels a comparison. Those teams, 2018 through 2021, the goal differential was insane. 2018, 15 positive goal differential. 2019, 38. 2020, even that short season, 29 goal difference. And then 2021, yes, a bit lower on the tail end, but 27 through those first 22 games. It's, it's going to take a lot to get back anywhere semblance at this point.
No, entirely. Look, it's going to be difficult no matter what the path forward is. The idea that it'll be easy, no, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a challenge to make it from here. It's an attainable challenge to make it into the playoffs. So maybe even once you get there, win a game or two. But it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be handed to this team because in large part as well, they failed to take advantage of certain opportunities through the season. And it's why, again, I hark on back to this last weekend. It's the concern over the club, not necessarily for its overall performance, which was good, I think, relative to the match that we were expecting to see, but it's the lack of ruthlessness and the fact that think about how this discussion would have possibly felt different if they'd picked up 3 points last weekend. Where would that have put them right now, Max?
Would have put them, what, 8th?
They'd have been
7th or 8th? I mean, definitely above the playoff line.
They'd have been above the playoff line. Yeah. Okay. They'd have been above the playoff line. They actually would have been in 7th. Think about what kind of a different tone this conversation takes on if you're up. Well, no, they would have been because they beat Orange County. Think about what a different tone this discussion takes on at that point. That's a key thing.
It's true. I mean, I do know that the tone definitely gets a lot more positive when you're hanging out with our friends over at Valley Taproom. Valley Taproom with their 2 locations in Gilbert and Queen Creek, right? Again, what do we do at the Gilbert location, Owen?
We watch Spain save football.
I appreciate the reminder. I almost forgot.
Save football.
Sure did.
We have many disagreements, but we can agree on one thing, can't we, Max?
I'm sure can.
That England cannot win a trophy.
It's true.
They can't be allowed to win a trophy.
It's not coming home.
It's never coming home.
Never, ever again. We witnessed that glorious non-achievement by England.
But we will be coming home after several drinks because we've gone to Valley Taproom.
Bang. Coming home, Valley Taproom. Let's go. In a good mood. Again, we've seen some rising matches there. Maybe some not so good rising matches. We forget about Sacramento away last year. But
what about San Diego Loyal, though? You watched that from Valley Taproom, the people did.
Yes.
But what a night that was.
Oh, boy. Yes. Check out our friends over at Valley Taproom. Again, Gilbert and their new Queen Creek location. The beers are flowing. They got the wine slushies, all that great stuff. Check them out online at Valley Taproom, and of course, find them on socials at Valley Taproom.
Right, let's do a quick USL kind of and just football in general, little look around. League record has been broken for the highest transfer fee paid in an intra USL Championship transfer, and it is because Louisville City have purchased Philip Goodrum from FC Tulsa.
Yep.
Tulsa didn't want to let Goodrum go. They didn't. But he had a release clause in his contract and Louisville met it. Now, look, he is a proven striker at this level.
Yep.
Scored a good number of goals, done it over multiple years. Obviously, he was with Memphis and really had the best out of him in Memphis. And he wanted to move on to a higher level, and Memphis didn't let him move on to a higher level, and it caused some real damage there in that relationship, which is also probably why there's a release clause in his contract in the first place. But I will say that, again, my understanding on this one is Rising would have had some interest, but that release clause was quite high, and especially at this time in the season, you were never going to get Tulsa, were you, to agree? Sure. Especially in conference, to sell him for a fee lower than his release clause. It's a big amount of money for this kind of a transfer, I believe, because people don't spend that kind of money. However, by football transfer numbers, it'll feel small if you know, probably if you bring the number out.
Sure.
But again, for this level, it's big. I don't know. Again, maybe you look at this earlier in the season. You're not in a position like you're in right now. I mean, kind of we've hinted at that more than enough. That if this team had, I think, taken signing strikers more seriously at the start of the year, they'd have been in a better position than they ended up in. But they are where they are right now. Have to see where that goes. And yeah, it was smart for him, Goleman Pat, to have a release clause in there after what Memphis did. Look, he was clearly miserable, I think, returning to Memphis. He was very vocal in press availability there in Memphis after the decision was made, you know, that he was coming back anyway. Not great. But that also means there's a big game coming up this weekend now. And it is Loose City against Charleston Battery.
Bang.
Plausible decider for the Players' Shield.
Sure is.
Coming up this weekend. We'll see over at Lynn Family Stadium. It's going to be on ESPN Plus, 5 o'clock Arizona time on Saturday night. That's a big game. It'll be interesting to see what happens there.
It is indeed, right? I mean, it's always pretty cool to see kind of those different like that, the transfer record broken like that. It just shows the quality of player. Again, those players don't grow on trees. And I mean, yeah, the teams that are willing to meet it, some aren't.
Here's what I'll say though. Tulsa, if you were worried that Tulsa especially, well, you wouldn't be worried if you're a Phoenix Rising fan. But if you thought, well, maybe they've lost something here, they've gone out and brought in a new loan signing as of today. 19-year-old Aaron Bibout from LA Galaxy on loan. He's been playing in MLS Next Pro. He's scored 22 goals in 48 appearances. He's a 6'4" striker. Decent with the ball on his feet. Not necessarily the hugely dominant guy in the air, but of course he is big. So you've still got that. It'll be interesting to see what he does. He played with Detroit at the end of last season. Didn't necessarily have the best of success there. But we'll have to see what he can be offered in Tulsa and how it'll work out for him. It could be an interesting addition that really helps to kickstart them a little bit this season. So I don't know. We'll see.
We will have to see. I mean, that's any other USL news we got?
This was not per se USL, but can we say reports coming from San Diego football that San Diego Wave could be about to bring in a new interim head coach. That's NWSL side San Diego Wave could be about to bring in.
Who is that coach?
Landon Donovan.
Oh my.
The man fails upwards. You've always got to respect the scam right there. Look, I think it's not really a surprise. It's not really a secret, to be frank, in USL. People weren't necessarily best enamored with Landon. Loyal fans probably loved him because they're loyal fans. It's kind of San Diego thing, I guess. But even then, some of the reactions from Wave fans I've seen going on, been interesting. As Goldman Pat comes in there, whoever is the assistant for the Wave is really the coach. That's interesting, isn't it? It's almost as though a lot of people credited Nate Miller for a lot of loyal successes and said that Landon was holding him back. But I don't know who would say things like that. I don't know who would say things like that around the league. You know, it's not just us even, actually, that one. That's a view held, I think, by quite a few individuals around the league. I'm shocked. I mean, I know he's got name recognition. I know all of that, but man, it's like bringing in Wayne Rooney right now after what he did to Birmingham, isn't it? Like, you know, that man and Plymouth bring him in, and what happens? They lose their first game of the league this season, 4-0 to Sheffield Wednesday. All right, that's kind of how it feels. All right, look, Landon, his teams in the playoffs just choked every time. They did. They lost 2 home playoff games. You know, there's only one guy who's ever scored a goal for San Diego Loyal in a playoff game, and it's Ronaldo Damas. They played 2 games and didn't score a goal.
Yeah.
And they lost 4-3 at home to Rising for their final ever match.
Yeah.
Look, they are. They're just not making a wise decision, I don't think, bringing Landon Donovan in.
That's fair.
It just feels a weird one. I don't think he is necessarily of the quality that I think you'd expect if you're going to part ways with a coach who was actually very popular in San Diego.
Yeah, and to Devin's point, Wrexham is better than apparently Swansea, which is better than Cardiff.
You know, Devon's a child, okay? His brain will develop fully one of these days.
Oh, man. Well, you say Landon Donovan's not a great person to bring in from that American perspective, but guess what? We don't have to worry about that. Fans of the U.S. men's national team, we have your manager. It is Mauricio Pochettino, coached the Spurs. Everyone loves Spurs. Guided them to great, amazing heights.
The Spurs.
Let's go, baby.
Did you just call them the Spurs?
The Spurs. Let's go. The Spurs come marching in. Let's go. What do we think? How are we feeling? You're a great U.S. men's national team fan. How do we feel about this appointment?
It's great. You know what's going to happen? You're going to win the Gold Cup against Antigua and against Mexico.
Let's go!
And then you're going to go to the World Cup and you're going to play an actually good team.
We're going to win more gold.
You're going to lose again.
We're going to more Gold Cups than you are. Can't take that away from us.
Yeah. Caribbean Island champions.
Let's go.
How many times?
Let's go.
You didn't actually win the last Gold Cup, did you?
Let's go. We always win.
No, I'm getting a no confirmation.
Yeah, but that's different.
No,
GGG is out.
Didn't Panama?
Out.
He wasn't there for that, was he? He wasn't there for that either. Was he? Greg won there for that Gold Cup, last Gold Cup. No, it was the interim in at that point.
No, BJ.
He'd been reappointed.
Yeah, it was BJ.
Yeah, it was BJ.
Yeah, but BJ won.
Yeah, but not the Gold Cup.
Well, the point is, listen, you go for
how many trophies did he bring to Spurs?
Again, several. Especially the big one, Champions League. There we go. But
no, he didn't.
Yes, he
no, he didn't.
Gold Cup champions, you'll never see
What kind of delusion
Let's
is
go.
this from Max?
What? Champions League finals hanging in the rafters. How many times do I have to tell everyone on this podcast? Listen, someone made a point today of Mauricio Pochettino. He is, right, people were wanting the foreign manager and something, linked to that, or you're linking to U.S. players. It's very interesting, right? Like, yes, he's, elite level clubs, right? Like, a Spurs and a PSG, not Chelsea. They're kind of a scrub club, right? But he's also then been at, like
the fact
Southampton and other clubs like that, right? He's a mix of everyone.
ESPN sources also saying that he's not going to move to the US full time.
Yeah. I mean, you only play a couple times a
You're
year.
getting a temporary manager in.
I mean, you only play a couple
Not even
times a year.
committed. Growing the game by living in somewhere in Europe.
Beautiful game, baby. The just scouting internationally, right? But
Well, you don't even need to live there. Every game is available via video.
Overall, I'm a fan of this, right? Reese, what say you? You fan? No?
Yeah.
Yes? Yeah, he likes it.
Because what he did with Tottenham.
He said he's a fan because they punched above their weight with Tottenham.
I mean,
but they still ultimately didn't win anything.
Hey, listen,
so
he took Spurs to he took Spurs to their longest sustained period of success in the modern era. Honestly, that's
fair enough.
for something.
No, that's fair enough.
Kyle, what say you? What do you like? You like Mauricio Pochettino?
Anything's better.
Anything is better
than Greg.
Oh, than Greg. Yes.
Oh,
okay.
People don't
Yeah,
want to
than
watch Greg Ball.
Oh,
Greg
man.
Ball.
No Greg Ball.
Your new Phoenix Rising FC head coach. No, if that happens, that'll be I think Max will just quit.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I've had enough. This, I thought Owen aged me horribly on this podcast, but that might just be the nail in the coffin.
See, he's been waiting for me to be the one that pushes him over the edge, but never rule out the fact it would be. No, I'd be surprised at that one.
Dear God,
there are names that I've heard, and it's not names like that.
Oh boy, yeah, we yeah. There's love everyone in the chat. We're gonna end here before it gets worse. Appreciate everyone here joining us
Kane
on the
wins penalties.
PHNX
Kane's a
Rising
penalty
podcast.
merchant.
We won't
Harry
be
Kane is
we
a
won't be
penalty
here
merchant?
on the weekend because no Phoenix Rising match. We'll be back next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Of course, in the meantime, you can follow me you can follow the show on Twitter at PHNX__Rising because double the underscore.
Double the potential signings coming.
I actually
We'll
don't hate
see.
that. I don't hate that. There is
We'll see.
there
We'll
is one.
There is
set
one
to be announced
coming
tomorrow.
Tomorrow, could there be more on the horizon as well?
Ooh, yeah, leave a like on your way out. You can follow me on Twitter at MaxDavidSimpson. You can follow the Oracle on Twitter at OJEvans18. You can follow Reese on Twitter at Reese11_.
The hot dog helper.
The hot dog helper himself. You can follow Kyle on Twitter at KCoop Sports. Hope everyone has a fun, right? There's gonna be no Phoenix Rising. How will you fill the void? Right? Premier League come back, everything like that. It's gonna be a good time, and hope you guys enjoy all the footy, right? But it is a beautiful game, but it's way more beautiful.
ASU open up this weekend.
Yes.
Tomorrow and Sunday, ASU, the women's football.
That's right.
Yeah. I guess there will be football in the Valley.
That's correct. It's a beautiful game, but it's way more beautiful when there is still football to fill the void. Good night.
We all silly like the mayor.